Good morning, everyone. It is a pleasure to be here this morning. And we have put together a very interesting panel of experts that we are truly honored that they are here this morning with us. They have been really going through in-depth topics that we would like to discuss with you. Not just about tourism trends here, but also particular things that are relevant to the destination and to all of you. Because we know that times are definitely changing. There are many things, many trends that we need to know, we need to be on top of. So the way that this is going to be working is we will have Mindy Pounder, that she's going to be moderating the panel. And we have, she's going to be going through specific questions on these specific points. So if anybody wants to ask a question, please let us know, and that we will also. So I'll introduce them, and then we'll start the panel. First, Mindy is the executive editor of Travel Agent West and oversees the content at travelagentwest.com, Explorer Magazine, and Future Gear in Travel. Her work has earned 30 awards from the Society of American Travel Writers and also from the North American Travel Journalists Association. So thank you. Then we have Felicia. Felicia joined Discovery Inc. in 2012 as an editor-in-chief at HTTP Gardens. She's currently managing editor at HTTP and travelchannel.com. She is a film study graduate from the University of Florida. And Felicia has traveled around the world and has also been earning different awards as the two Green High Shade Awards from the Society of Professional Journalists. So thank you very much. So, of course, they all have a very extensive bio. Concise. Then we have Eric. Eric, he has been at the VIP Summit 40 years ago. Eric is Travel Weekly's destination editor. He joined the publication as copy editor in 2008. And before, he was the copy editor at the Baltimore Sun, where he worked with stories, including one that was a Pulitzer-nominated investigative series about situations happening in Hong Kong. Thank you very much. And then finally, we have Nancy Tejos. She is the hospitality editor at Skip. She has been a professional journalist for more than 2 decades. And prior to joining Skip, she was a travel writer for the USA Today for 7 years. Writing about destinations, hotels, airline cruises, and before that, she was also working as a travel writer at the Washington Post. So I'm sure, as you see, the vast experience that all of them have is going to be definitely very useful and we will have a very interesting. Thank you very much. Muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias, Rodrigo, for that very warm welcome. We are honored to be here today with all of you in this amazing destination where I can see the mountains from my viewpoint. So if I'm looking that way, that's what I'm looking at. I'm very honored to be here with these amazing and accomplished journalists, and we have a lot of exciting questions to get through. The objective of today is for you all to walk out of here with some trends and some insights that you can use. We're really going to be talking about our own experiences and what's motivating our work, what we'll be covering in the next year in our content. So we're going to start out talking about sustainability. I know sustainability is a big topic at this event and tomorrow's keynote. That it's a topic that continues to evolve as destinations and consumers get more insight into what they can actually do to make a difference and to not exploit the places we love. There are a lot of sub-trends with sustainability, and one of those is last chance or doom tourism. And if you're not familiar with that, it is a kind of tourism that you might see in sensational articles online, like visit these 15 places before they disappear forever. And while people go into these places where the glaciers are melting and the polar bears are present, have good intentions, they love the environment, they love nature, maybe this kind of tourism can be exploitive and is actually contributing to the issues. So I wanted to ask, start with you, Felicia, because you're nodding your head. What do you think are some ways that journalists can cover these topics that are not exploitive and are actually going to help the cause?
I mean, I think we have a great platform as journalists to be able to direct people, and I would actually have a hard time suggesting that someone travel to a place where it's a fragile ecosystem, or they're endangered animals, or where they would have a negative impact. So I'm all about offering alternatives, and so if you're interested, in interacting with wildlife, you could go to this place that the ecosystem is fragile, but why not try this? I feel like we want to offer options for our readers at Travel Channel. So, if you don't have the budget at the moment to go to Paris, why not try New Orleans, which has the same amazing food culture and French influences, but it's not as expensive. So I think that would probably be my particular approach.
I think that's a great point in terms of what a potential vacationer would like from their experience. If you can kind of steer them towards something else that's going to give them, that's going to kind of scratch that itch, but it's not maybe necessarily what everybody else is doing. That's a fantastic way to kind of ease the sort of over-tourism issue that we're all kind of talking about and dealing with. I think as journalists, I think the other kind of important thing that we can do is to highlight people or companies who are doing sustainable things that are really innovative, or really they can tell that there's a real commitment to a new technology. Like Hurtigrut's new ship, for example. And it's that's a real good step in the right direction of kind of getting off fossil fuels, and I think that's a real step in the right direction, especially considering that cruising is usually, they're definitely one of the industries that gets tagged a lot for being sort of not all that eco-friendly. I think as journalists, the other thing that we can do is simply, I think, kind of, which sounds kind of simple, is actually just kind of obeying the rules of the destination. Not crossing barricades, not taking flash photos when you're not supposed to, and just kind of respecting the rules, and they're generally there for a reason.
Yeah, I'd like to bring up an example of a trip that I recently took to the Galapagos Islands in Ecuador, and which is a beautiful, beautiful place. So when I wrote my story, obviously I wrote about all the activities that we did, and the wildlife, the marine life. But a big part of my story was highlighting what the Ecuadorian government is doing to protect the islands. And I think they've been doing a really great job. As soon as you land, you are told to get rid of any of your plastic bottles, for one thing. So at the very outset, they're saying, you need to follow certain rules, and you need to protect this environment. They limit the number of cruise ships that go around the islands. They limit the size of them. So I was on a ship that had no more than 30 people. And they're just really all about protecting the animals. And they give you all sorts of rules about, respect them, don't get too close to them. Every night, naturalists would give us a sort of a lecture describing, what's happening with all the islands. So it was a very educational experience as well. And so, I think that was a great example of a country that's really committed to sustainability and protecting their islands. And I wrote about that. I thought that was a very big part of the story. So I think as journalists, we should highlight those efforts.
Definitely. And that brings up a very newsy item here in Baja California Sur, where there's some articles floating around as of last week about the new conservation fund that is in the region. And some people reported it as a mandatory tax, which it's not. But I know it's a little bit controversial. It's in the early stages, so it's important that it gets communicated properly. But I'm curious, let's start with you, Erin, because you actually have written an article about it already. But how do you think the destination should handle the, explaining this to their visitors?
Yeah, and actually, Mia Copel actually kind of got it wrong the first time, so went back, corrected that, and I think the thing that highlighted for me was, we were talking a little bit about this last night. I think tourists, if they're told what that fund is for, I think the support will be there. That's maybe, I don't know, that's my intuition on that. I think we were talking a little bit about resort fees, and that's one of those fees that people that can anger a vacationer because they don't really know what the nature of it is. So you tell people this is what this fund is for. I feel like that will do a lot to encourage people to contribute. I mean, certainly, just as somebody who travels, I feel that way. Just as long as you know where it's going, what it's for. And I think, what Oz already said in terms of it's not mandatory, we're not going to be pushy about it. Those things are also really encouraging. And I think it's something that maybe we as people who travel a lot can lose track of sometimes. If somebody's on a vacation, it's not something they do very often. That kind of bombardment you get on certain airports, if you're adding to that, that might be, people might recoil at that. So I think they're on the right track in terms of, letting people know what it is, how they can pay it, the fact that it's not something that's gonna be demanded of them. I think that's all. I think they're on the right track as far as all that goes.
I think with putting the information out there correctly, the Galapagos has a similar kind of tax that all goes to conservation efforts.
Theirs is mandatory, correct?
Theirs is mandatory, but they've had it for a long time. I think with time, people understand what it's about, and I didn't see anyone balk about it at all, and I didn't mind paying it either.
There's a way for destinations to actually just say this is what it is, and we are protecting the environment. And like you said, people are flocking to go to the Galapagos, right. And they understand it's this very preserved destination of Darwinian, wonder and splendor, and they're willing to pay that extra fee. So there is a way to make it more exclusive and more luxurious by actually enforcing it.
And I feel like if you're a thoughtful traveler and you are aware of the world around you, you recognize and feel a certain sense of guilt when you go to countries where you see the luxury of where you're staying versus the poverty that's all around you. So I think that kind of payment it's an opportunity for countries to say, this is a way for you to give back. This is a way that we can all acknowledge that there is a divide in money and power in these countries, and you can use your money to kind of level the playing field. So appealing to people's better angels and really asking them to, because I think people want to. I think smart people are aware there's a lot of injustice in the world, and they want to put their money towards good causes. So.
Right, it could be a way to attract actually a better traveler. And do you guys feel like there are better travelers? Are you kind of learning of consumers caring, or are you seeing that consumers want to contribute? Yeah. Hopefully.
There are good people out there.
Good. Yeah, so don't underestimate the traveler and the consumer. So let's move into a little bit. This is related to sustainability and climate change. There are a lot of crises. There's a lot of natural disasters. I just got back from Napa, and an hour away, the Kincaid fire was wreaking havoc in Sonoma, and there were power outages where I was, and I was really amazed by those hotels and the destination partners who were banding together to make sure the travelers felt like there was no issue in their stay, and they could have a normal stay. So there's something to be said about people who can handle crises well. There's also security threats and terrorism, and I know Los Cabos is no stranger to security, issues from consumers' perceptions, which may or may not be true. But in your guys' careers, you've seen a lot of crises from Ebola to terrorists in France, etc. What do you think the cycle is, and how do you think a destination can best handle a crisis? Eric, why don't you begin?
Sure. I think for us, being a travel trade, I think the actual news cycle of it is probably about a quarter. I don't want to put too fine of a number on it, but I think a story typically sort of runs its course in about like a season. Unfortunately, people's perceptions can linger well beyond that. I mean, certain destinations, they're just kind of saddled with it. It's fascinating how that works. Some destinations can brush off things like Teflon, and other destinations, you get a reputation for something that happened, and it just kind of sticks with you. I think for one thing that struck me, there are a couple of crises sort of along those lines that have happened this year that made me think that especially for what we do, I think when destinations or suppliers think of us as partners too, which I know typically media are kind of antagonists to a whole lot of industries and a whole lot of people, but really, I think we truly want to make sure that we get things right, and we really want to make sure that these things are reported. It's a huge part of what we do at Travel Weekly is to talk about, right, like if there's an outbreak of Ebola, you can kind of educate people and say, well, that's actually happening in this part of Africa. If you're, taking a safari in Tanzania or something, it's not going to affect you at all. It's like being in another country, basically. It is being in another country. So yeah, I think, anything that we can do to keep those lines of communication all open, and we're happy to get those messages out. I mean, it's a huge part of what we do. And then in return, our readers, travel advisors, travel agents, they're able to convey those messages to their clients, and then they can make their own decisions about what they want to do with that information.
Yeah, I think you're right. There are some destinations that unfortunately are going to get that sort of bad rap for a while. One of my favorite places to go to is Lebanon. And when people ask me, where do you love to go? And I say, I love going to Lebanon. And they all look at me like I'm crazy. But it is about good communication. And I think that destinations have to be very transparent. And not ignore whatever crisis is happening, but really get out there. For example, in Hawaii a couple of years ago, the volcano erupted on the Big Island, and so Volcanoes National Park was closed down for a long time. But the good thing that they did was say, this is only one part of the island, and here are the places that you can go to where hotels are open and restaurants are open, and it's safe. So I think that destinations have to really sort of communicate very specific information like that.
Mm-hmm. And I think, again, to talk about people's sense of altruism, I think places like the Bahamas or Puerto Rico that have been devastated by storms, it's been very effective to educate people that you can actually help these locations by traveling and supporting the communities by giving back with your tourism dollars. So there is, to some extent, an opportunity with a crisis event. I also think that, when you travel, you're vulnerable and much more attuned to disaster in other places and oblivious to disaster in your own surroundings. Obviously, we live in a very violent world. America has a lot of violence. So to come to a place like Mexico and feel like you have to be more vigilant, it just illustrates the sense of, I think, tentativeness and the psychology of being a traveler, that you really are not in your safe place, you're not in your familiar world. So anything a destination can do to make you feel more secure, to make you feel safe, even if it's something as small as the JW Marriott where we're staying, the fact that they take down the license number of the Uber drivers who show up, so you feel like someone's keeping track. And I think being familiar and aware too of female travelers by themselves, people who might feel particularly vulnerable, African American travelers, LGBT travelers, being cognizant of how that affects their experience of a place is important.
Yeah, I love that, and I love your point about how a destination can be proactive, and Los Cabos has initiated a 5-point plan, and they got their private trust working on security, and just knowing that feels very secure, that there is some work going into those issues. Whether or not it's even needed is a whole other thing to consumers. Eric, I saw you nodding along.
Well, there was one thing that you said that really resonated with me, because the Bahamas had an event they had like a media event and an event for travel agents. This was not that long after the hurricane, and I thought they did a really excellent job of kind of conveying two things, one of which kind of relates to what you're saying. One was, 14 out of these 16 islands are open for business. We're gonna be realistic about what's not open. We're gonna let you know as soon as we know when those things are gonna be back open. And the other thing that they said is, the best way you can help out, stay another night. Come visit. pour a little bit more money into it, and that's really going to be what helps more than anything else.
And Eric, you just got back from the DR. You've been reporting a lot on the Dominican Republic with their tainted alcohol scandal, which I know Mexico has gone through too, and now it's been totally refuted. So how do you think that all played out? What is your analysis of that situation?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. I think like a lot of things, sometimes there's so much uncertainty and there's only so much that folks can say about things, and then as time goes on, in some ways you're like, well, okay, this is a story that kind of happened 3 months ago, and then for some reason it gets sort of resuscitated, whether that's through media, whether that's through, it's a difficult one. I think they have a real challenge. I think they're going to be kind of stuck with the perception of that for a while. And to be fair, a lot of the media reports did kind of equated these things that were maybe not necessarily related. But on the other hand, I think that, to kind of get out front of an issue, and I'm not just saying this because I was in Los Cabos, but 2 years ago I was at the Mart in Rodrigo, and I talked about when there was sort of a security flare-up around here, and you just get in front of the issue, say what you can, say that you're being proactive, and show concrete ways that you are being proactive about something. I mean, it helps a lot. I mean, I think just kind of, letting people know that you're looking into it, that this is, we take these things seriously, whether they end up being exactly as they were portrayed is one thing or another. Like, look, as media, we can get things wrong for sure.
There's also the issue of these days with digital, wanting to write that headline that you're going to click on. And so that, I think with that issue, so much of it came off as very sensationalized because of that choice to write something that was clickable. I mean, do you guys see that with your consumer publications?
I'm not doing a ton of breaking news, so we're really lifestyle oriented, and yes, we all live by the law of getting people to go through our photo galleries and click on our stories, and so you want to write a compelling headline, but luckily I don't feel the need to make anything especially salacious but I think what you were saying is really important, the idea of just being transparent and taking every opportunity you can to educate. It makes me, this is a little bit unrelated in some ways, but it makes me think about, I live in Atlanta, Georgia, in the South, and the way we are trying to embrace the history of slavery and have all these memorials in places like Alabama to lynching, and there's so many opportunities. I think people want to learn, and travelers are much more interested in engaging. So anything you can say to connect people to the place where they are and to give them a context. Like, we live in a global world where there are these experiences all over, and we're just a part of that. You're living in a world that has changed. So just being very clear about intention, I think, is important.
Great. Okay, we're going to talk about some more fun topics. So it was a little doom and gloom, but that's our world today, you guys. Los Cabos, however, is a place of fun, a place of amazing luxury hotels, some of the best in the world, so many new ones, which we're all hotel geeks here, so we are super excited to check some of these out. However, clients today are very discerning. They're harder than ever to wow. We're trying to wow them with unique and customized things, but sometimes it just fails because they've seen it 100 times already. I'm wondering if there's anything in your guys' recent travels that wowed you. You travel all the time, so you see it all. Nancy, why don't you begin?
Sure. So I stayed at the Intercontinental in Los Angeles, and they have those Aesop toiletries, which are quite nice. And I went to take a shower, and I noticed that they had put my name on the label, which I had never seen before. And that it was a very simple thing, but I thought, wow, this is really cool. It was nice, and I took them home with me, and I think I still have them in my shower to remind me who I am, I suppose. And
to remind you of your stay at the Intercontinental.
Exactly. But I've seen different types of interesting amenities. The Thompson Seattle, obviously they give you like a free glass of complimentary sparkling wine, which a lot of people do. But then for all you ladies out there, they'll give you a free hair blowout and bang cuts at a nearby salon for free. So that's kind of nice. And then the Peninsula and Beverly Hills will give you monogrammed pillowcases. But actually, for me personally, I like hotels that will let you check in and check out whenever you want. So to me, all the other stuff, the shampoos and the pillowcases, that's really fun. But for me, that's the best amenity, to be able to, get to a hotel, have my room ready, and leave whenever I can. And the Standard Hotel started doing that a few years ago, and so does the Peninsula in Beverly Hills. So that's kind of simple. It's not glamorous, but it's useful.
I really relate to, I feel like luxury is almost like a cliche, and there's so many times, you're staying at places and we have fret linens and we have these, special luxury toiletries, and we all relate to toiletries. I think it's funny, I have a similar sort of anecdote, but I relate more to something that's really locavore. If you can figure out a way to get someone who makes, a special shampoo, a special, body cream, in the destination, and import that rather than some kind of generic luxury good, I think that's so much more meaningful. I think it's more meaningful where we're staying at the JW Marriott, that they have local art, and they have local bags that you can tote to the swimming pool, and things that remind you of the uniqueness of where you are, because luxury is uniform. I mean, a lot of places have the same luxury, touchstones, and I just really relate to anything that makes me feel special and remembered. I stayed at a hotel in Charleston, South Carolina, called the Zero George, and again, it was like small details, like they had a brass actual key that you would use to get into your room, and it was such a tiny detail, but so lovely. And they had, the custom New York toiletries, that they had the big bottles rather than the little individuals, so it's more sustainable, but you feel like you're being introduced maybe to a brand that you weren't familiar with, and then you go seek that out later. So just those tiny little things stay with you and give the destination more impact and more of a personal, like you're staying in someone's home, they've thought about you and your comfort and your interests, and very small things.
The human touch.
Yeah.
The opposite of the human touch is technology, which is also constantly evolving in hotel rooms in the luxury sector. Eric, do you have any examples of some tech fails in hotel rooms?
Certainly. I think the thing with technology is that I think particularly if you're, in the hospitality industry and you're dealing with a wide range of demographics, you have to make sure this stuff is intuitive. So I was on a really fantastic escorted tour in Spain, and the hotels were they had kind of mixed up the hotel sort of offering. They had kind of changed it up, and they ended up going with sort of more boutique-y kind of city center kind of hotels. Fantastic, locations were fantastic, kind of put you in neighborhoods that were maybe a little out of the ordinary for what you would normally do on a Spain tour. But I remember one of the hotels, it was very the lobby had a lot of sort of these fashion kind of Vogue photos, and you're like, okay, I get the vibe of this. The hallways were jet black, and they had these lighting on the side, so it was very very cool. But then the next morning at breakfast, there were so many people who complained in this group who were, they were probably, the age range was probably from 50s to 70s, and they were like, I couldn't find the light switch. It was just so every wall is just this glass thing, and you're just I have no idea where the light switch is. I don't know how to turn the TV on. Wasn't really sure about the shower. There were just a lot of tech issues in terms of not making it intuitive, and also just making sure it functions. I mean, sometimes just the old analog light switch. If your touch screen isn't going to work right, then just go with the old school. I don't know. I kind of feel the importance of leading with technology, you kind of have to couple that with making it intuitive for people.
Yeah, I've had a lot of tech fails. Technology should make your life easier, and little things one example is I recently stayed at a hotel in New York, And it was a lovely room with floor-to-ceiling windows and great views. But I wanted to go to sleep, and I knew the next morning it was going to get very bright in there. So I needed to close those curtains. So I went and I tried to close it, physically close it. Couldn't do it. So then I saw all these different switches near my bed, and I thought, okay, maybe one of these controls that. And of course, they weren't labeled at all. So
that's ugly.
I just started just pressing them, and like lights would go on, and it was like, you know, a party in the room, but the curtains wouldn't close. Yeah. And so then I was so frustrated, I was so sleepy too, and I just called down to the front desk and I said, can someone come up here to teach me how to close these curtains? And this woman came up and she went to the switches and she pressed a button, and lo and behold, they closed. And then she gave me this attitude. She said, it's very easy to figure this out. And I said, no, it's not. Look at that. There is no label there. How is anyone supposed to figure that out? You know it because you work here. This is my first time here. Yeah, and I'm exhausted.
And it shouldn't take a 30-minute, intro when you check into your room on how to use the room.
But
Exactly.
I actually appreciate that. I actually like it. I know sometimes it's just a way for someone to get a tip, but I want someone to walk me through the room. Yes, you are in an unfamiliar environment, and your coping strategies break down sometimes. You're tired, whatever. So for someone to walk you through the basics is really amazing. I stayed at a beautiful Four Seasons surf club in Miami, and they had an iPad to control everything, the lights, and it's saying one of those moments when you're like, I need to go to bed now. I don't know how to make the lights go away. So it's frustrating. That's not when you're in your jammies, when you want to have someone your doula come up and instruct you on how to turn the lights off. But yeah, it's just, for me, it's an opportunity for going that extra mile. It's service. It doesn't cost a lot extra. It's not a luxury item. It's just someone taking the time when they take your suitcase up to the room to break it down for you.
Experiential travel is, it's here to stay. It's not even a trend, but you don't want an experiential moment with the lighting, I don't think. But on that topic, Los Cabos has their 10 new experiences, which they're rolling out with tour operator partners, and they're super cool things that I've never, aligned with Los Cabos, like going into a gold mining town, etc. And so I'm wondering, what do you guys think the evolution of experiential travel is going to be with, other terms like off the beaten path, immersive travel, etc., are all associated with this overarching experiential thing. And so I'm wondering what you guys are seeing and what you're interested in covering when it relates to this. Nancy?
Yes, I think this is the big buzzword in the industry right now. And a lot of it has to do with the younger generation of travelers. They don't just want to sit by the pool. They want to go out and see the destination and do interesting things. They possibly want to volunteer. Remember, volunteerism was a big thing. So I think that's kind of starting to come back. So I definitely think a lot of hotels are having to come up with, and destinations as well, are having to come up with different experiences, whether it's a food tour or an educational tour, that kind of thing. And I personally, I like to do different things when I'm at a destination. When I went down to Colombia, I did the usual, I want to go, see a coffee farm, because that's what people do down there. But when I was in Bogota, I found this graffiti tour, because there's a lot of graffiti in different neighborhoods. And that was a little bit different, that, you don't really hear about people going to Bogota to check out the graffiti. I did volunteering in another part of Mexico. And in Rio, actually, people tell you not to go into the favelas, into the, well, I guess they call them slums in the mountains, but I found a guide and we went up there and we had lunch at a woman's house. And, it's supposed to be a dangerous place, but we had a lovely time. There was a lot of police around, so we felt safe. So that was a different kind of experience that I had. And in Cuba, I stayed at an Airbnb with a family. So I think those are the kinds of things that people are looking for, just different experiences.
Airbnb is definitely leading the charge with all of this, especially with their Airbnb experiences where they have hosts taking you to their own personal favorite things, and it doesn't get much more local than that. Eric, did you want to say something?
I think even as an extension of you were talking about street art, I think something that I think is probably we're on the sort of cusp of seeing, and I saw it somewhere in my Instagram for you guys. I couldn't find it again, but somebody had this sort of idea of kind of connecting you, like if say you have like a hobby or some kind of pastime and somebody connects you in this destination with somebody with sort of a like-minded thing, whether it's art, it could be music, culinary, kind of more of a deep dive in terms of maybe like you actually want to learn how to make a specific dish. So I think maybe the next step in that, the evolution of that sort of immersive thing would be to go really hardcore into like one of your hobbies and kind of get like another country's take on that. Like I was thinking about Japan, for example. We were just talking about Japan, and if somebody was like a comic book fan and you just wanted to do a deep dive into anime and manga, for example, I think that'd be like a fantastic thing if there was like a guide, and I'm sure there probably is a guide who could kind of shepherd you to like the cool shops and that kind of thing. So yeah, I think that might be sort of the next step in that.
As niche as you can get.
Yeah,
There's someone into that, and that's what they want to do when they're traveling.
Yeah, I was in Belfast, Ireland recently, and we took a black taxi tour of the neighborhoods previously divided by Catholics and Protestants, and the tour was done by a local man who grew up in those neighborhoods, who had knew about the experience of being pulled over by police and searched, and he knew every nook and cranny of the history of this place he was taking us to look at the murals, to look at the neighborhoods. And it was so important. It wasn't connected to the hotel we were staying at, but it should have been. That hotel should have been aware. This is an incredible way to engage with Irish history from someone who's incredibly knowledgeable in the community. And I think more destinations should tap into that talent base they have in the place. They're not at your hotel, they're out in the community, but figure out a way to connect with them to help them grow their business and to give your guests this access to information they wouldn't have otherwise. I also think sort of what you're saying, the next stage of this experiential travel is going to be people want to have a unique engagement with the place where they are traveling, but I also think they want to take the place home with them. So we just did a story on Travel Channel about souvenirs you can make while you're staying at a particular destination. If you're in Venice, you can make a masquerade mask, or other things that connect you with the local handicraft or the local food scene. So then you've got this thing to take home, but you also, like if you're taking a mezcal mixology class in Mexico, you take that back with you. You make these cocktails for your friends. You become an advocate for the place you just were. You're paying it forward. So I think people want to continue the experience of the trip even after they've gotten off the plane.
Speaking of mezcal and food, we love food over here. So what are some interesting culinary trends you all are seeing? Nancy, I know I think you were interested in the plant-based stuff you're seeing, right?
Yeah, that's the, it was gluten-free and before, and veggie vegan. But yeah, plant-based. I'm seeing a lot of cruise ships and hotels really changing their menus to appeal to people who want to eat that way. And food tours, they've been around forever, and I love doing them. But I'm seeing some more specialized kind of food tours for vegans or vegetarians or gluten-free or plant-based. And I think people are exploring culinary offerings in places that are a little bit more off the beaten path. Like, of course, you're going to get a great food tour in Paris and Barcelona, but now there are people going to Scandinavia or exploring Southeast Asia. And also, I think a lot of people are really interested in where their food is coming from. So I think there are places that are offering them the opportunity to kind of explore that. So maybe you go to a farm and you see exactly where the food is being grown, that it's eventually going to end up on your plate. Or you go to a vineyard and you're picking the grapes yourselves. and I just think food tourism is going to keep exploding. I mean.
Totally. Eric, what about you?
Yeah, I think to your point, I think as travelers get more sophisticated and more adventurous in the ways that they eat, they're more likely to go into a deeper dive and not think of Mexican food as just this one all-encompassing thing. They'll start thinking in terms of regional cuisines. What can you get on the coast versus, how's mole different on this side of the country versus that side, and that sort of thing. So, yeah, I think as travelers get more sophisticated and they start demanding these things and seeking them out, it also has the effect of making it less intimidating. So I'm certainly one of those people who can be intimidated by a lot of cuisines and like picking wines and all these things. And I think there's a real effort to kind of make these things more understandable and accessible, which is always good. I mean, I think again, like when you're on vacation, hopefully these things that you're able to bring something back with you, and I think that kind of ties in with that.
One trend that's kind of already happening all over the place, but I love it, is making the hotel in-house restaurant actually good, a place you want to eat. Because you have been to so many in the past restaurants in the hotel that it's a matter of convenience and it's god-awful, and you feel like you're segregated in this other part of the hotel. I stayed at this amazing boutique hotel in Richmond, Virginia called the Cork Hotel, and they had their dining room in the lobby. It was like front and center, so you felt like you were part of a scene. You were in the mix. The food was amazing. It was like really a way of connecting that food part of the hotel with the stay part in a really smart way. I also think chefs are like the rock stars. This has been said before, but they're the rock stars of our age. And anything you can do, obviously destinations put so much money into, hiring away amazing chefs, highlighting their innovative cuisine, but you should engage them, take advantage of their celebrity status. I stayed at a St. Regis in Mexico City where the chef took us on a tour of one of the markets in Mexico City, pointed out the vendors, ate the insects with us, told us which insects were good and which weren't so good, and it was just an amazing opportunity to tap this incredible skill set of this talented food person and get their insight into the community where they live. So it was like going behind the scenes, peeling back the curtain a little bit to see the inner workings of this restaurant at this, hotel. So anything like that where you can have a connection is cool.
So we are running out of time a little bit. We're going to open the floor to questions. I just want to get through one more question so you guys can start thinking about what you want to ask our lovely panelists. But our last question will be about family travel. We're seeing a lot more research these days that the younger kids are actually the ones choosing the vacation destination. So what are some, I see some like eyes bulging a little bit. So what are some ways destinations, hotels, tour operators, etc. can market in a way that's friendly to children, or what are some things that parents might be looking for when they're thinking about their kids? Nancy, go for it.
Well, I think from the hotel side, you can't just have a pool and a playground anymore, and you have to provide more of an experience, educational and fun. So having like a kids club, or some examples of this are the Ritz-Carlton in Grand Cayman. They actually have they created something with Jean-Michel Cousteau, where the kids are really learning about the water. They even have a submarine there that the kids can go in. So that kind of creativity, I think, will really appeal to children. And there's the other examples of that. Just having camps for these kids, so that they're not just being bored and hanging out by the pool. And then with the Gen Z kids, you're totally right. We've seen all these studies where these are like 20-year-olds, right, or even 18 or so, and parents are really listening to them. They're making travel decisions based on what these kids want, and so you also have to entertain them. And again, that goes back to providing experiences and getting them out of the resort and getting them out of the hotel. And maybe taking them horseback riding, or just exploring towns, and really just getting them out there, I think is really important.
Eric, do you want to add something?
Yeah, and I think in addition to that, kind of, in the hotel experience itself, being able to provide for, like a wide swath of age ranges among children, like we were talking about, you've got teens, you've got tweens, you've got little kids, you've got, so just making sure that your offerings are catering to a pretty wide range of kids. And yeah, I mean, some of those things will be maybe a little, like we were talking about, just something as simple as connectivity. If your teen's going to want to be, online for a good long while, I mean, that's so be it. That's going to be kind of the way it goes. But yeah, and I thought that maybe the other thing along those lines was some of these brand partnerships. Whether I don't know whether that's something that maybe parents that will resonate with parents, just having certain brands that they can trust, like what Charisma does, like the Nick Hotel and that sort of thing. Whether just the reassurance of that will sort of resonate with like families.
I have a very jaded, very cynical 18-year-old, and he's always kind of been like that since he was probably 5. He actually is very, as all kids his age, every age now, is very much under the sway of social media. So I feel like destinations, you find like the youngest person on your staff, maybe it's the intern, the person you just hired, you think doesn't have a clue. Actually, they're going to be teaching you how you need to reach out to those kids from 5 to 18. They speak the language. Kids these days are very attuned to inauthenticity. They know when a grown-up is trying to sound cool, and they will sniff it out. So I think you should find the clever young people on your staff and put them in charge of your social media, put them in charge of your Instagram. Get them taking photos so kids see, oh, this is a place I want to go. And because I have this very jaded kid, he never wanted to go to the kids zone or the kids club. And it made me think, I mean, there are also opportunities to not push your kids away because you want to do something grown up, but take advantage of the trend for multi-generational travel and figure out ways you can offer activities for parents and kids and grandparents to do together that they'll all get something out of. I think a lot of kids are time strapped just like adults are. They're in school, they're doing after school activities, they're prepping for the SAT, they have so much on their plates. It's nice for them to connect with their family when they go on vacation. They don't want to go to the kids zone and hang out with, a range of, 7 to 15-year-olds, kids they may not have anything in common with. So I think just really figuring out a way to tap into the connections that happen when you're on vacation with your own family are magical.
100%. On that note, we will be taking questions from all of you guys. So will there be someone walking around with a microphone? Yes, okay. So if you have a question, just raise your hand. Okay.
Hi, my name is Danielle from the Apple Leisure Group. Thank you. That was really informative dialogue and information. My question is about, or a little bit more of your perspective on alternative accommodations such as Airbnb and their impacts on traditional hotels, sustainability, and that overall consumer's contribution to the destination, and how does it differ from the hotel customer?
I guess the Airbnb customer wants to live a little bit more like a local and live in an apartment setting, and the hotel customer, I think, is more into reliability. I think that's the main difference about it. The Airbnb gives you very unique experiences and unique accommodations. I mean, you could live in a treehouse, and whereas a hotel customer just wants to know, okay, this is where I'm going to get my key, and it's going to work, and I'm going to get housekeeping, and if something wrong happens, I can, call downstairs, and someone will show up right away to fix it. So it is a different kind of customer, and there's been a lot of tension between the hotel industry and Airbnb and HomeAway. They're similar. in terms of the hotel industry feels that the Airbnbs are not regulated enough, don't pay the same taxes that they have to. So that's just been a lot of sort of arguing that's been going on in Washington, D.C. with the American Hotel and Lodging Association. The other thing I'm seeing is that hotels are kind of stepping up their game because they know that, Airbnb, or especially younger people, millennials, are going for Airbnb. And one of the things, actually, I wrote a story that came out today, or is supposed to come out today, about how some hotels are creating shared guest rooms to kind of feel like apartments. So Wyndham, Super 8 by Wyndham, created Room 8. They're piloting it now. And it's basically 4 beds in one room. And then there's an area where they'll have a foosball table, a place where everyone can congregate. And it'll feel like an apartment, like an Airbnb, really. And then Element by Marriott has a similar thing that they've started rolling out, where you get your own room, but then there's a shared living room and a shared kitchen. So those are some ways that the hotel industry is trying to, attract those millennials away from Airbnb.
I prefer hotels. I'm not a huge Airbnb person. And I did stay at an interesting concept in Philadelphia. It's invisible service hotels where it's like an Airbnb in the sense it's like an apartment and you feel like you're living the local life. But you get a keypad entry to the hotel and you get a keypad entry to your particular room. But they change the linens and they offer, local coffees and teas. And so it's a combination, like a hybrid of hotel and Airbnb. But one thing I think that made me feel very kind of insecure in that particular space was, as a woman traveling by myself, I felt like no one was kind of looking after me and no one knew where I was at any given time, and that's something I really appreciate about a hotel, and something I think hotels are getting better at is taking advantage of the fact that people want service and they want personalization, they want an engagement with human beings. I don't really love anonymity in my stay when I go places, so I feel like that's an opportunity for hotels to really personalize and get granular and get engaged with their customers.